Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Aretha Lafayette, Program Manager for Research Education Program Development and Outreach in the Office of Research and Innovation. I will serve as your session MC for today's discussion. Before we begin this program, we would like to make a land acknowledgement. UT Dallas stands on land originally settled and occupied by the Caddo, Wichita, and Comanche people. We recognize the legacy of colonization and the harm caused by the forced removal of indigenous people from these lands. UT Dallas continues to benefit from the contributions of indigenous students and employees on our campus, and we are committed to ongoing support for the Native culture that is essential to our community. For more information on the history of the land UT Dallas occupies, the Caddo Confederacy, and relevant treaties, please visit the Multicultural Center website. In this webinar, Hanover will provide key insights into the DoD Young Investigators Program, funding mechanism, and developing a responsive and competitive proposal for the competition. Hanover will also provide recommendations for proposal development and discuss how proposals are reviewed against DoD YIP merit review criteria. Here to present today is Paul Tuttle. Paul began his career in research administration in 2001 as a funding opportunities specialist. Since then, he has focused on pre-award and proposal development, managing those functions at 3 UNC system institutions. Later, at a for-profit grant writing company, he hired and supervised what became a team of 16 grant consultants serving nearly 500 United States clients in 4 sectors: higher education, K-12, nonprofits, and healthcare providers. After returning to North Carolina A&T State University, the nation's largest HBCU, to serve as the Director of Proposal Development in February of 2015 through January of 2022, he has returned to Hanover Research as a grants consultant. Paul holds a Master's of Art in English with a concentration in rhetoric and composition. His persuasive writing background has enabled him to assist faculty researchers and senior university administrators in securing over $175 million in sponsored program and research awards over the last 2 decades. He has participated in the National Council of University Research Administrators in CURA since 2001, the Society of Research Administrators International since 2002, and the National Organization of Research Development Professionals since 2012. He was the 2018 through 2019 president of SRIA's North Carolina chapter and was the 2018 through 2022 member of NORDP's board of directors. He continues to be an invited presenter at statewide, regional, national, and international conferences in research administration and research development. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. You have the floor.
And thank you, Aretha. I appreciate it very much. What a wonderful introduction. So, as Aretha said, we're going to be talking about the Department of Defense's Young Investigator Program. And our agenda today will be to first contextualize the whole thing in terms of all young or junior faculty or early career programs and how you can benefit from them, and then contextualize the DoD YIP program, Young Investigator Program, within the Department of Defense, and then talk about the program itself, which is actually 4 separate programs. I'll explain that later, and then give you some resources to leverage, and then have some questions and answer time period at the end. So first, in general, why should you consider applying to young or junior faculty or early career programs near the beginning or at the beginning of your research career? Well, first of all, it's a recognition of your innovative thinking and research potential. It's prestigious. It's one of those in which you're selected as among the cream of the crop nationally or internationally, depending on the agency. Second, it's the foundation of, or the launch pad for, or the launch pad toward your later career. It sets the stage in a very memorable way, in a very positive way, in a way that sets you apart from your peers very positively. It also is the beginning of a possible long-term fruitful relationship with at least one funding agency. And if you receive several different junior faculty or early career program awards, then this is extra special in terms of the prestige. And of course, it provides you with funding, it provides you with mentoring, it provides you with agency or industry contacts, it provides you with a network, it provides you with an in to the facilities and the resources that these agencies have, thereby jump-starting your professional development in a specific research area. And remember that as a person holding a PhD, that means that your discipline and your institution that awarded you that PhD placed a stamp of approval on you that you can now be an independent investigator. So this launches your career as that independent investigator. So if you think about it in those terms, then you think about these examples. The DARPA Young Faculty Award, we'll say more about that in a bit. The DoD Young Investigator Program, we'll say more about that in a bit. The Department of Energy Early Career Office of Science Early Career Research Program, the NIH and NSF opportunities. These are some ways in which people are supported early in their careers in such a way that they are noted for their innovation, noted for their forward or advanced thinking, and sought out for working in a hot topic area, or having out of the box thinking, or being sure to be a superstar both now and later. I want to say one thing about this particular slide, though. The fourth bullet point, the NIH new investigator definition and the early stage investigator policies, those are all about nurturing early career and new investigators versus the actual awards, which will be the DARPA, DoD, DOE, and NSF awards, which actually give you a package of money to use in a project that will serve as the foundation for and the launch pad toward your later career. So the fourth bullet point is a little different from the other ones that are on this slide. So let's talk about the Department of Defense and the context for this Young Investigator Program. First of all, the Department of Defense is a mission-driven agency. Its job is not to provide research funding for you. Its job is to defend the country. So it's a mission-driven federal agency. Research is part of what it does in order to defend the country. It is the largest federal funder of research and development, specifically in STEM, sciences, technology, engineering or pre-engineering, mathematics. And it is not just the DoD, it's a collection of multiple agencies under the umbrella term of the Department of Defense. And as one of the oldest agencies in the cabinet, it has its own grants-related culture. So, as a mission-driven federal agency, I think you need to understand what DoD does. We talked just a moment ago about national security and defense, but also it's not just, to put it crudely, things that go boom. It's also a lot of different things. There's a growing interest in health-related research, both for the warfighter and for the veteran. When the warfighter returns to civilian life, there's also growing interest in the applicability of the social sciences, organizational behavior, leadership, the nuances of how people behave in groups and individually, and all of that. So it's not just weapons, warheads, explosions, things like that. It's a lot of different things, including, yes, fundamental and basic research on how materials behave, on how biochemistry functions, on how a veteran might need a certain kind of hearing augmentation after service, etc. And priorities do change rapidly as agency needs change. So because it is mission driven, you have to keep your finger on the pulse of exactly what the DoD agencies need and how to respond to them effectively, efficiently, quickly, if you are working in a field that connects closely with some current or future projected need. So that, bottom bullet point here on this screen, that last one, networking and conversations with program officers are essential to success to make sure that you're on top of those needs, and that understanding of how to align with those needs and how to serve the country by doing your research, killing two birds with one stone, as it were, by doing what you need to do for your own work and for your own planning, as well as aligning with the Department of Defense's needs. So we said earlier that it's the largest federal funder of R&D, especially in the sciences. You can see that the navy blue here is Department of Defense R&D funding from 2010 through 2024. Purple is Health and Human Services. EPA is the little black band between the purple and the red. Red is Department of Energy. Excuse me, the black is EPA and USDA, by the way, and U.S. Department of Agriculture. Then the red is Department of Energy, not Education. Education is ED, not DOE. And NASA is the aquamarine. DoD is the nearly navy blue, the French blue. That's nearly navy blue, and then NSF is the gold at the very bottom of each column. So as you can see, there's a considerable amount provided to Department of Defense for funding in research in the sciences and technology. Here's an estimate of what will happen, or here's some possible estimates of what will happen in the 2024 federal budget. We've got 2023 enacted as the top row. Again, blue on the left-hand side is Department of Defense, and purple is Health and Human Services, etc. You can see the colors there. The 2024 Biden administration request is the second row down. Then the 2024 House first draft of appropriations bills is the third row down, and the 2024 Senate row is the last row. And this is from the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS.org. And yes, that was from a presentation dated September 11th, 2023. So this is very recent. So this is where we are. And if you go to AAAS.org and go to their budget section, you can see how R&D appropriations play out in the federal budget cycle each year. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I would recommend that you go there and keep up to date, remain up to date on what's going on with the kinds of funding that interest you. Here's the Department of Defense organizational structure. You can see why I said that it's basically an umbrella name for a group of different agencies. So at the second main row, top left of the second main row, you see Office of the Secretary of Defense. Then moving to the right, you see Department of the Army, Department of the Navy, Department of the Air Force. And of course, within the Navy, there's also the Marine Corps. And then to the right is Joint Chiefs of Staff. Each one of these in the organizational structure discussion that was the remainder of this entire slide deck, from which I took this first initial slide, each one has been discussed further and allowed to flower into larger and larger detail. So you'll see slides 2 and 3, slide 4, slide 5 and 6, and slides 7, 8, and 9. This is only one of 9. So you can see that there's a lot to be said, more than this, about the Department of Defense organizational structure, but you need to understand the kinds of agencies, the types of agencies within this organizational structure that do in fact fund the kinds of research that might interest you, including the Young Investigator Program. So you have the Army Research Office, which is headquartered in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. You have the Army Medical Research and Materiel Command up in the Northeast. I believe it's either Maryland or New Jersey, I've forgotten which. Air Force Office of Scientific Research, the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. CDMRP was established when the breast cancer advocates went to Congress and said our daughters, our wives, our aunties, our grandmothers, our female friends of all ages are dying too fast from breast cancer, and the solutions are not good enough, and NIH is too slow, bench to bedside. What can we do? We need more money to attack breast cancer. And so Congress said, we know exactly where to put it. We're going to put it in the healthcare area of the Army. And so for a long time, it was the website was cdmrp.army.mil. Now it's cdmrp.health.mil. But it's still the congressionally directed medical research programs, everything from prostate cancer to ovarian cancer to breast cancer, everything all the way down to razor bumps on the chin and how to handle those for the warfighter and for the veteran. A lot of different diseases, a lot of different problems, medical issues that the warfighter and the veteran have. There's multiple different topics, health topics. So yes, Department of Defense does do health. Then there's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. DARPA was a direct response to 1957 Sputnik, the USSR satellite that changed for a moment, changed the geopolitics of the planet when the USSR country when they put Sputnik up in space and all of a sudden stole a march on United States science and technology, and the educational establishment responded, and the Defense Department responded, and so the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency still has the two words technological surprise in its mission as a result of 1957 Sputnik. Then there's the Minerva Research Initiative, which is social sciences, and you can see that when you visit that link, there's a live link on another slide, which you'll be able to use when you receive the slides. There's also the National Security Agency, basically all about hackers and protecting ourselves from spies and protecting ourselves from electronic and human infiltration. Then there's the Office of Naval Research, which was originally the first and largest research agency under the umbrella of the Department of Defense, because that was a World War II agency. and all the buildup of World War II and all the new technology of World War II came from ONR, or almost, excuse me, almost all of it. But as you might expect, each of the DoD agencies has its own specific set of priorities. For example, the Army is all about war being done on land. The Navy is all about warfare being performed in the water. The Air Force is all about air and space. And of course, we have a new Space Force since the Trump administration. So even though there are similar best practices to approaching other federal agencies, for example, knowing your field, knowing the agency mission and priorities, talking with program staff, I'm also going to share a little bit later some further requirements and nuances that are very strong parts of the culture for DoD and how that will affect your reaching out and applying for young investigator programming. DoD does support 3 levels of research. 6.1 is basic research. 6.2 is applied research. 6.3 is research toward prototyping and testing and evaluation, optimizing new technologies. So if you look at your, just making one comment here, if you look at your smartphone, that is an optimized version of what had been difficult to hack battlefield communications capabilities. And that entered the civilian population through Defense Department research that was then picked up by civilian communications carriers and translated into something that all of us now have to have at our ear or on our hip. And still difficult to hack, still for some people battlefield communications. But yes, the cell phones, the smartphones, they are that outgrowth of that kind of technology. And I could talk at length about other kinds of things, different kinds of artificial blood that's used by hospitals in critical areas, were developed in war zones, things like that. So yeah, different kinds of treatment for shock, developed in war zones. All of that. The knowledge that we have learned through, yes, admittedly, very difficult, in some cases very horrible means, we have been able to put into the healthcare environment so that civilians can benefit from the lessons we learned on the battlefield. And of course, I've also listed CDMRP and Minerva Research Initiative again here as among the different kinds of research that DoD supports. Now, DoD funding priorities typically is that middle bullet point: research, development, testing, and evaluation, drawing heavily from engineering, computer science, and physical science. That first bullet point: focus on meeting critical near-term and future mission development priorities. Always connecting to the last statement on the slide, the DoD agency missions: air, land, sea, defense, wounded soldiers, and social strategies, leadership, organizational development, how to build a group into a team, for example. DoD culture is different from several other federal grant-making agencies. Most other federal research agencies, the program officers can only recommend, and someone else has the power, the authority, the prestige, whatever you want to call it, to actually make awards. However, typically, Department of Defense program officers have the authority. So when you are reaching out to a program officer, I don't want this to intimidate you, but when you are reaching out to a DoD program officer, most likely, and some Department of Energy program officers, most likely you are talking with the person who can actually make and will actually make the decision as to whether or not to spend the money on the investment in your idea and your topic area, your investigation. So when they say we strongly recommend that you reach out with a concept paper or a white paper and or a quad chart, that means it's the cultural expectation. So do it, because only through that discussion will they become excited upon hearing your pitch. And then they will say, yes, please send me a proposal as quickly as possible, because it's so much based on networking and so much based on connections and so much based on that personal touch between you and the program officer. Now, white papers were called white papers during the Cold War simply because that was the color of the typing paper that they were submitted on. They were also blue and pink and goldenrod back in the days when we had carbon paper between different colors of paper in order to make copies before Xerox, right? So white paper is the same as concept paper. Sometimes it's the same as abstract, but typically it's going to be a brief document, and it's going to be something that outlines what you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it, what the relevance is to the DoD priorities, and how much time it will take to do it, and how much it will cost, typically. And we have that on another slide as well. But you would want to, in pitching that, you would want to prepare a script that sounds very, very smooth and very confident, but something that you have practiced so that you're comfortable with it, so that it's like your elevator speech if you're from a business school. It's like your elevator speech where you get on the elevator at the ground floor and you happen to see the CEO next to you, and you've wanted a meeting with that CEO for a long time, and you have 90 seconds before it reaches the CEO's floor to make your pitch. Well, it's similar. You don't have 90 seconds. You have 2 pages, sometimes 3 to 5 pages, but you still have a limited amount of time to catch the attention of the program officer, and a limited amount of time to make your case and to make it persuasive and to make it compelling. Now, unfortunately, many Department of Defense program officers, they have made a fetish of telling it like it is, and they'll be blunt. Later on, I'll talk briefly about the Hanover Catechism with DARPA, and one of the questions is, who cares? And you know, people want to say very in a very pointed way, they want to put you on the spot, and they want to see how you perform when you are confronted with the difficult questions. Who cares? This costs too much. Why are you doing this? Why do you think this will work? And people will ask it in that kind of way. Don't be offended. Don't take it personally. They do this to everyone because it's a cultural thing. They want to see how you respond to an objection or to a counter argument. They want to see how you will respond. What the thing is to keep your cool and say, thank you, I appreciate that. However, I would like to say that this, I think, will work because, and be ready for those questions, be ready for that blunt criticism, including be ready for the constructive criticism, because there will be people who say, you know, I could really go for this if only this and this and this were stronger, or this and this and this were better, or this and this were better aligned with my portfolio that I'm spending money on as a program officer. But you would want to make sure that you connected your ideas explicitly to the Department of Defense mission objectives. You would want to be ready for any questions. Well, first of all, you want to have done your homework and be ready to say, these are the ways in which my research supports or advances those mission priorities, those specific mission priorities. But if they don't quite see it, you're going to have to make the case. So be ready to make the case. So the Department of Defense culture is basically performative. They are going to want to ask you to stand up for what you think is right, and to make the case, make the pitch, and to be able to answer those difficult questions. Now, in approaching DoD agencies, you don't need to know everything, but you need to know blessedly close to everything about the BAAs that are out there every at least 2 years. Sometimes they're in place for longer. You would need to look at the websites to see what they say about what we want. You would want to talk with people, other DoD researchers or wannabe researchers, other DoD PIs. You'd want to listen to what the program officers say at conferences, presentations, workshops. You would want to read the publications and the reports from the Department of Defense. And then third bullet point down, you'd want to develop that concept paper and or quad chart. And I have two links, live links in the slides relating to quad charts. But typically there's some understanding in one quadrant. A quad chart is a single PowerPoint slide, because Department of Defense folks are busy and they want to see it visually represented on a slide in 4 quadrants. That's what it's called, a quad chart. And so you have in one quadrant, you have, this is what the science is. Then there's the technology level that it's at, whether it's 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, or any kind of background accomplishments or anything like that that relate to the maturity of the science that you're proposing. Then there's a schedule or a time frame, how long it will take to do the work, and perhaps some milestones. And then there's a price. This is how much it will cost to do this work. So right there on a single quad chart is a basic explanation of, this is what I want to do and this is what I'm pitching. So that concept or white paper and or quad chart, that should be sufficient to, plus your spiel, to convince a program officer that yes, your ideas are worth investing in, so that they will then be ready to encourage you or invite you. That's the words used in the DoD culture, to encourage you or to invite you to submit either a white paper, a letter of intent, a pre-application, or a full proposal. And so whatever that next step is, they're going to want to see it written up in greater detail, or as a formal first step to get the ball rolling, so that they can understand more, learn more, and understand more, and then as they learn more, they will become presumably more and more excited, become your advocate, and say, you know, I've got $150,000. I really want to shower it on you, so that you will be able to do this work that you pitched to me about 6, 9, 12, 18 months ago. The Young Investigator Program could be one avenue. We'll talk about that. Also, it could be that these BAAs that each of the DoD grant-making agencies puts out each year, each of the branches, Army, Air Force, and Navy. Each of the branches puts out every 2 to 5 years, approximately, they put out a BAA. These are the topic areas that interest us. They are, yes, investigator driven to the extent that they are fundamental or basic research, typically, but within a well-defined area of, this is where we want to see technological advance, and this is how we want to see those technologies advance. We need technologies that will do this. List, boom, 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 bullet points. And if you think that you can provide those, if you think that you have been doing a certain kind of work with polyethylene, and you've decided that that will be something that can be used in armor, then sure, go ahead and pitch it, and go ahead and say, yes, we have some sort of composite armor that will be better than the current state of the art, and this is how, and this is why, and we've been testing it, and let's talk about it at the molecular or even the nano level, and let's then talk about it in terms of scale up and production, and then commercialization in some sense through a Defense Department company, excuse me, a Defense Department contractor. So then after, next to last bullet point, after the white paper review and discussion, you are going to be invited to submit a full proposal if that discussion goes well. Remember to be properly appreciative of the discussion and of the feedback that you receive. You would want to thank them for their feedback. Even the feedback that in the back of your mind, you're saying, well, that doesn't really make sense to me. Be properly appreciative. That's part of the culture. Thank you for giving me feedback. Thank you for guiding me toward a more effective or efficient or useful or DoD friendly way of looking at this. So you would want to make sure that you absorb and respond to all such feedback in order to refine your research, refine your proposal, refine your project concept. Now, to move into the topic of the day, the DoD Young Investigator Program, really it is 4 distinct programs. The DARPA Young Faculty Award, the ARO Young Investigator Program, the Air Force Young Investigator Program, and the ONR Young Investigator Program. Typically, it's thought of as 4 different programs. Weirdly, the Army Research Office Young Investigator Program, apparently, from everything I can find out, has not been offered since their BAA, their most recent BAA for Basic and Applied Scientific Research expired on the 31st of March, 2017. I have not found a more recent version. What I have done is I have gone to those other 3 bullet points and links, and I have downloaded the most recent fiscal year, either 2023 or 2024, Young Faculty Award or Young Investigator Program from the Air Force or ONR YIP. I've downloaded those and sent those along to Aretha and the team as supplemental materials for you to use in preparing future proposals to these other 3. Now, that's not to say that the ARO Young Investigator Program will not reappear somehow, because in the federal government things do that. They sort of go back in the shadows and then they reappear, depending on appropriations. But I'm just telling you that I was not able to find, and so I'm 95% certain that it's not going forward right now, but those other 3 are. So just a discussion now about the special characteristics of each one of the 3 that I was able to in fact find as most recently closing in 2023 as a fiscal year 2024 budget item. Okay, so DARPA. Here's the PI eligibility. Interestingly, DARPA allows foreign nationals to apply. I had not realized that. That's interesting, but there is some very strongly worded clauses on conflict of interest. So you better believe if you're a foreign national that you have to read those and be very careful. Among the eligibility requirements is to be either current tenure track, current tenured, or the equivalent within 12 years of your PhD employed at a U.S. institution, and per all 3 of them, 1 submission per funding cycle per PI. Interestingly, DARPA tells you to budget for 36 months, but DARPA decides whether to give you those last 12 months based on your performance as a principal investigator and how well you push the project forward. DARPA decides, but you must budget for 36 months. And then the final row, you're also invited to travel to DARPA multiple times. So they tell you that you must include a minimum travel budget of 6 meetings in your proposal. So if you're looking at this, you're thinking, oh, wow, gosh, $1 million. Budget carefully. Get the assistance of your sponsor programs office in making this happen. Also, make sure that you understand the Hanover Catechism. This is that blunt series of questions, including who cares and what will happen if your work is actually successful. A very blunt series of questions, very frankly worded. The Hanover Catechism. But this is basically something that a program officer who was very highly regarded in the 1950s and 60s and 70s put together that was basically, you must be able to answer these questions in order to make a good pitch to me. And so they have adopted that across all of DARPA, and they've adopted it especially across the 6 technical offices. BTO is biotechnology, MTO is microelectronics, etc. So there's 6 technical offices. You'll want to look those up and see whether DARPA and its focus on technological surprise. Remember, they're revolutionary versus evolutionary. They say to you clearly, advances cannot be merely incremental. They have to be revolutionary. If you have something that you think will disrupt the current state of the art to the extent that it provides technological surprise, DARPA is your agency. Just like a contract, the YFA asks you to submit multiple, quote, volumes. One is a technical volume, one is a cost volume, one is an administrative volume. There's also a cover page and an executive summary, and they want the executive summary in PowerPoint, comparable to the quad chart idea. Interestingly, DARPA also assigns a program officer to each incoming YFA PI, and that person will serve as a project manager and a mentor and someone who assists that person with furthering their role and their experiences and their professional development into that early superstar kind of figure. So they are deliberately trying to take the best of the best of the best and push those individuals forward with this YFA. Now, the review criteria, sorry about that. The review criteria are 3. Overall scientific and technical merit, explained here. Potential contribution and relevance to the DARPA mission. Technological surprise, listed there. Cost realism. And then reporting is going to include monthly and yearly and final reports, and award terms and conditions will include these requirements. So here for DARPA, the 3 review criteria are relatively equal. That's not the same for the 2 other Young Investigator Program type programs under the Department of Defense umbrella. So with Air Force Young Investigator Program, for example, it's a little different. For Air Force, you can be employed at a for-profit business or nonprofit research organization, or even an industrial laboratory, if you have achieved or received your doctorate no earlier than 1st of April 2016 for this particular funding cycle, this most recent funding cycle. The dollars are less, $150K for 3 years. Exceptional proposals, meaning they really love your hot topic and it'll make a huge difference to the Air Force. Exceptional proposals, you might request higher funding levels and or longer duration, and that would be a conversation for the program officer. There's Air Force relevance. You'll have to connect with those specific topics of interest that are in the existing BAA that is out there. Remember, that's refreshed every 2 to 5 years. Then there's a required 3-page white paper. is to test your commitment. This is the formal announcement that you are interested. If you did not submit a white paper, you're ineligible to submit a Young Investigator Program proposal because full proposals are invitation only for the Air Force. Then there's a 20-page proposal narrative, which includes, yes, your high performance computing requirements, if any. A lot of people understand that there's a data-driven aspect to today's research. And then a data management plan. It's presented and discussed as optional, but quite likely it's not optional for you if you're using a lot of data. And they remind you that if you're not selected for the YIP, you may submit your proposal to the general BAA, and you may be fairly successful there. Review criteria are 5, 2 primary, 3 additional. The 3 additional together are less important than the 2 primary each. Okay, so primary are top, and then additional together lesser. So that's they actually have a weighting aspect, a weighted aspect to the review criteria that that DARPA does not have. Reporting, of course, I highlighted, you must provide reports on time. Second bullet point after that, failure to provide required reports or providing reports after required due dates could lead to being considered ineligible for future awards. And may I remind you that this could affect your institution's eligibility to receive future awards. That is what we were told in the past at 2 different institutions in the UNC system, that you'd better get your faculty member to submit the report, because otherwise your entire institution is off our list of permissible institutions. So just wanted to warn you on that point. There's also other kinds of reports, and your OSPR office at your institution will be able to assist you with these. Some awards require more frequent technical reports than others, and that's because they consider your institution to be a risk because they don't know you yet. And as a result, if they don't know you, they require you to jump through more hoops. It's a fact of human nature. They don't know you, therefore you need to prove yourself more. It's just the way it is. ONR, as opposed to DARPA and Air Force, ONR notes that nationals, not foreign nationals, but nationals who are from a U.S. territory can apply, but you have to be employed at a U.S. institution of higher education that award degrees in STEM, or a nonprofit research organization with a focus on what they call scientific or educational services. Now, if you recall, Air Force allowed you to be working for a for-profit. ONR does not. ONR specifically says we are highly competitive. In fiscal year 2023, nearly 175 proposals were received, only 25 were awarded, for a total value of $18 million. PIs are strongly encouraged to discuss the ideas, and ONR says the YIP is not a research initiation opportunity with standards that are less demanding than other research grant programs. Instead, it is more demanding, and it has even more prestige than these other opportunities. So that's why it's so much more competitive. You also have a required letter of support from your institution that the other 2 programs do not require. And if there is no letter of support, the application is considered incomplete and it won't be considered for award. Similarly to the Air Force, there's a 20-page technical proposal. And this 20-page technical proposal looks almost like an NSF or NIH proposal in terms of its structure, in terms of the ideas, except you also have to include naval relevance. There's also other required and optional attachments, and these are similar as well to NSF or NIH typical attachments. So the ONR is probably going to be the most familiar to you if you have been an NSF or an NIH investigator. ONR YIP technical review criteria are going to be these 5, and they are all equal. So just as DARPA's review criteria are all equal, these are all equal. They are not weighted in any sense as the review criteria for the Air Force are. So technical merit, connection with naval science and technology priorities, curriculum vitae, do you have the expertise to do the work? And they also mention fellowships, national, international honors, impact, professional activities and awards, scientific and professional organizations, all that sort of thing. They mention these things as these are things that our YIP folks should be involved in. So you should already be, even at the beginning of your career, a mover and a shaker in your field. Just wanting to put that out there to sort of translate what they're saying here. The letter of support and the budget, those are fairly standard. Career, NSF career has a letter of support. So this is going to be most similar to the NSF career, while also connected to that whole idea of being already visibly a superstar, and they are going to push you further using this YIP program. And the reporting, they're going to be typically stated in the award terms and conditions, and they're going to be adhering to the standard grant terms and conditions found at this link, which is going to be a live link when you receive the slides. Okay, so what does all this mean? All this means that these typical grant narrative elements, there are some specific hints and tips. Of course, when it says strongly encouraged to reach out to the program officer, that means do it. That means have a smooth and confident pitch. That means understand how well your ideas are connected to these Defense Department or Defense branch priorities. But also, let's talk about these specifics. Okay, so first, your introduction, it may or may not exist. You may just simply jump right into the background and rationale and the statement of the problem and the literature review, the context and the relevance to the DoD agency mission. So the first 3 bullet points on the left-hand side are essentially collective as a sort of background and rationale that functions as an introduction, perhaps, but you won't have something separate called an introduction typically. Then your conceptual framework or logic model or theory of change, that's going to be replaced with something like a diagram or a quad chart or something like that that provides a visual of this is how the idea looks if we were to try to visualize it. The hypotheses or research questions, often those are going to be replaced with tasks or thrusts or objectives, so that you're going to be talking in those terms, that kind of language, versus hypotheses or research questions, which is more typically a biomedical way of thinking, except for, of course, CDMRP, which does invite hypotheses and or research questions. Methodology and strategy, if you're trying a high-risk method, similar to NIH, if you're trying anything that might not work out, make sure you have a plan B or even plan C, so that if your research, for whatever reason, does not yield the amount or type or usability of results that you think you need, that your research can still move forward with method plan B or method plan C. Your statement of work, your management plan, that's often combined with the methodology so that all of that together constitutes that work plan. And they often call it an SOW, a statement of work there. And then, of course, your staff and institutional qualifications. Quite often you will not have a separate, quote, management plan. Instead, you will have this person will do this, and then the program officer or the review team will have to go to your bio sketches and or other brief statements in the narrative to understand why X person is doing this kind of work. So for a National Institutes of Health or NSF proposal, You might say, here's the management plan. This person's doing this because they have 30 years of experience and blah, 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 blah. No, here you would say, this person's going to be doing this. And in their bio sketch, it will say, they have 30 years of experience or expertise in doing blah, 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 which supports their doing that. So there's some more work on the part of the reviewers sometimes in putting the pieces together, but you have to make sure that those pieces are there so that the reviewers can see them. The evaluation plan, whether or not the project has been effective or successful, that is typically non-existent, because what you do is you show that you can achieve the objectives, or can complete the tasks, or can accomplish the thrust areas. And that constitutes the success of the project. You would want to leverage your resources. Here's some resources for proposal development. They are live links for you. And for the next two slides, I'm going to ask Erin Bangsball, our Managing Content Director, to unmute and talk briefly about the Grants Learning Center and the next slide.
Thanks so much, Paul. My name is Erin Bangsball. I'm subbing today for Chris Gray, your contact at Hanover, for our relationship with the university. Our Grants Learning Center is one of the resources you have available to you. This is a series of self-paced educational modules and resources that we've collated in one spot for your ease of reference, and you can take these modules at your own pace and jump around and find what's useful to you. Right now, our modules are focused on NSF career, as well as the NIH R series mechanisms. There's a great tool in the NIH series to help you identify which R mechanism is appropriate for you. And if you're interested, Paul has provided the links at the bottom. Please reach out to Emily Lacey in the Office of Research and Innovation, or my colleague Chris, for access. On the next slide, you also have access to our grants newsletters. We put out weekly grant alerts where we highlighted all of the new federal and foundation opportunities in one space for your reference. Monthly, we put out a forecast of grant opportunities coming up, again, both federal and foundation, with projections available for higher ed, health, and K through 12. And then we put out bi-monthly grants calendars with different topics that are refreshed twice a year. These topics include upcoming opportunities that are of interest to those pursuing research centers, those that are early career, and upcoming opportunities for you. But you can access this link provided over to the left once you have the slides, and select which calendars are of interest to you, which digests are of interest to you, and you could sign up for our weekly grant alerts. These alerts are not customized, but they are well organized and just a quick way to look and see what has come out that week that may be of interest to you and aligned with your research.
Thanks so much, Erin. And now we come to the part of our session with some Q&A. I don't know whether there are any questions in the chat. I don't see any.
Thank you, Paul. We don't have any questions in the chat at this time, but we would certainly like to thank you and Erin both for joining us today. We appreciate you for sharing such valuable information with us. And we thank you to our audience as well for joining us. We ask that you keep up with the Research of Innovation, the Office of Research and Innovation programs by following us on our social media and subscribing to our newsletter. And remember to join us this Wednesday, October 25th at the UT Dallas Visitor Center as Research Days continues with the Graduate Student Poster Competition and Research Showcase. Stop by and grab a snack and learn more about research labs on campus, internship opportunities, cloud storage solutions with Amazon Web Services, participate in a community painting project, and so much more. This information and the polite request to complete a brief survey about today's program found in the chat. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.